Hi, Julia Barzyk here from Wise Investigator. So today I wanted to talk about something that affects us all in every aspect of our lives. That's information overload. It affects our personal lives, it affects our professional lives broadly, and it affects the research funding process and the research community, the global research community. So before I get into talking about the funding process, I just want to recognize that the scope of what we are talking about in terms of dealing with all of the information that's out there, it's very broad, and it needs to be managed better, right? We all, I think, are in agreement that new systems need to be developed to sort out the information in a way that it will become accessible to those who need it, to those who could benefit from it now and into the future, and to use our resources most efficiently and to include the most people in the research process. Now, fortunately, there is a lot of work being done to improve the situation with information overload and knowledge management. And I think right away of the decentralized science, or DeSci, community, who are working to develop tools to help us with this. One of the things that they're addressing is the reproducibility crisis in science, which can be mitigated with some new tools that are being developed. So in terms of what I do, though, I work with clients one-on-one. So I'm working all the way over here at the individual level. So if we think about the global research community and then the individual researcher and how that person is approaching their research and their career, and every system in between of all different scopes and scales. So why is this information overload situation so critical to even just that individual researcher in terms of their approach to the funding process? It is, I would say, one of the most important factors that's affecting funding right now that is maybe under-recognized or unrecognized. I think that people who are applying for funding still want to have this idea that the funders have a workplace that is fully staffed, where there's plenty of time to read the proposals in a relaxed and focused way, when all of the hard work that you've put into a proposal is coming in to be evaluated. You want to imagine that that proposal is really getting all the attention that it deserves from whoever's managing it at the funder, as well as anyone who's providing any kind of evaluations of it or making any kind of decisions related to that proposal. And while I can say that when I was working in the federal government, with all honesty, I can say that everyone who I worked with who was managing anything related to proposals or the funding process more broadly was extremely dedicated to making sure that everything that came in had a fair and thorough review or evaluation. And I felt very, very proud of the way that the organization I was with formerly operated in that sense. That said, we cannot deny that information overload affects everybody, just like I said, including the people at a funding organization. So what this means is that you as an individual PI need to be focused now more than ever on clarity and connecting the dots for anyone who could come into contact with your document, with your proposal, with your message. And this relates also to some conversations that I had at a conference that I was at recently, where I spoke to a couple of people who are working in the research development area. And they are people who were not trained in science or a technical field. They may have been trained in English or in marketing or something else. And they indicated that they really felt like they were in a support type role in terms of the research development process and could contribute maybe in somewhat of a limited way because they didn't have that technical background. And these people were also early career people, and so they are in a little bit of a more of a supporting role. However, connecting this back to the information overload, I know that the skills that those folks bring, that have the communication skills, that have the language skills, and that have the strategy that a training in something like marketing would bring, definitely should be partnering with technical people to get that message across about the impact of the work that you want to do to cut through the information overload. I think that a very clear message, which can be a bit difficult to develop if you're a PI who's just working, in the weeds, just with your technical peers, you haven't been trained in this, but it is necessary. It's not just a nice to have, and it's absolutely necessary, and it will help with the information overload. So my final message here, to try to make a clear point myself, is that when you are preparing to talk to a funder, when you're preparing a document to submit to a funder, keep in mind that that person is dealing with information overload, because we all are. So we know that that person is too. And then you can start developing strategies for how to mitigate the effects of the information overload by developing the right messaging and the right content for that stage of the process so that you can have the best chance of success possible.